session, we will hear from Mr. Daniel Pasker, Sales Manager, Southern Africa, Solar. Before Mr. Pasker begins his presentation, I'd like to introduce him for our audience. Mr. Daniel Pasker is Sales Manager, Southern Africa for Solar. He has extensive business development, accounts and sales management background with 7+ years experience in the renewable energy sector in Southern Africa. Mr. Pasker, if you can unmute yourself and switch on your video, it'll be great. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. We've given you presenter rights, so you can start sharing your presentation.
Sure thing. Right, there we go. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Great. Yes, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. So basically, just a quick introduction to who Solar is. We are a world-leading Tier 1 solar PV manufacturer. We have customers in over 135 countries worldwide, and we have over 50 gigawatts of cumulative shippings as of 2020. Now, if you look at the Southern African market specifically, jumping ahead, just some more information based on Solar. We are PERC patent holders. We are the first company to supply PID resistant modules. First adopter of double printing technology in mass production, as well as a strong emphasis on R&D. We also have a IP patent for gallium doping wafers, which is one of the specific technologies that we're quite proud of. Now, if we move ahead to the Southern African market specifically, installed capacity over the last 5 years, you can see a trend that it's actually more than doubled in the last 5 years, which is extremely positive for the South African market specifically. There's a lot of challenges we have in Africa compared to the rest of the world. So it has been a bit of a long and slow process in order to get these sort of numbers. And in reality, it is a bit behind compared to other countries. But it does show that the market is definitely becoming more attractive, and we're definitely pushing in the right direction. If you have a look at, like I said, the rest of the world compared to South Africa, there's a massive shortfall of where we are compared to where everyone else is. But it's understandable. I mean, that's how things are currently. You can see, though, that the Middle East and Africa have had significant trends in the last few years, as well as projections for the next 20 years. It seems to be quite fantastic. Even though we're looking at 2,500 megawatts installed capacity, in 2019, the reality is by 2022 we should be double that. So it's not like it's going to be another 5 years before the installed capacity doubles. It'll probably only 2 or 3 years in the reality of things. There is a lot of attractiveness in the African market. People often think attractiveness is specifically around the need for energy in the market. That's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of factors which contribute to the attractiveness of the market. I mean, here you can see the typical power outages for each region on a monthly basis, and you would think that countries that have a higher need for energy security would be more attractive in terms of solar PV development, but that's not entirely the case. Things like political stability, cost of electricity, energy security are all tied factors that contribute to the attractiveness of the industry. As you can see, I mean, South Africa is only 0.59 to 0.12 outages in a typical month, which, living in South Africa, that doesn't sound 100% accurate. Seems to be a bit more than that these days. But I mean, if you take us based, with Egypt, who is pretty much on a similar sort of outages, we are both extremely attractive industries at the moment. And it's only going to get better. I mean, with what's on the pipeline for the next few years, it's a no-brainer to invest and look into solar technologies. Some of the anticipated utility projects coming up that everyone is waiting for and quite excited about is, the risk mitigation IPP program, which is 2 megawatts of emergency power will be supplemented into the grid, operational by 2022. The next is the next bid window 5, which will see 6.8 gigawatts introduced from solar and wind, as well as an additional 513 megawatts from energy storage introduced in the next few years. Now, obviously, these are just some of the large utility scale developments that everyone is waiting for. We've seen in the last few years a massive push from agricultural sector, or specifically, or more notably, the mining industry for self-generation for their mines and for their day-to-day operations. The thing is, things like carbon tax, the cost of electricity now, which again went up another 15%, are all factors that are making large-scale solar PV more attractive in the market at the moment. And like I said, there is a push for self-generation from specifically, for example, mines, that we've seen in the last few years. So that's why we wanted to discuss a few of these trends that we're noticing currently in the market. If you look at the market, how it's split in terms of utility scale, C&I, and residential, there's going to be utility taking majority of the share due to obviously large volumes. And obviously C&I is next, with residential being the lowest share of the sector. What we believe is going to happen, though, is there's definitely going to be a larger push in the C&I space in the next incoming years. Like I said, due to things like carbon tax, due to incentives like Section 12B, due to cost of modules coming down, battery technology becoming more affordable, things like that, we'll definitely see an increase in the share in the C&I space. So in terms of C&I and utility scale projects, one of the trends is definitely towards larger modules. Now, the larger the module doesn't necessarily mean the better the module. There seems to be a bit of a sweet spot at the moment where it's between a 400 and 600 watt module, which is the sweet spot in the industry for efficiency and power output. Most of the time at the moment, the industry standard is 160 millimeter cells and 182 millimeter cells. Anything larger than a 550 or 600 watt at the moment becomes a bit of a gray area in terms of efficiency output. Like I said, we're definitely finding the sweet spot to be in the 450 to 550, 600 watt range currently. And if you think of it from a technology standpoint, it's drastic. It's a drastic increase in cell size and module size in the last few years. If you look at the benefits, obviously, for these larger modules for utility plants, you can definitely see, because there's a higher energy output, you can see less equipment is needed for installations, less labor because there's less modules being used. You can string more modules together, saving a lot of capital on bill of materials and cabling and that sort of thing. If you look at logistics, in the last few years, we've seen modules going from 592 container to about 620 modules now, for example, on our Deep Blue series per container, which is obviously fantastic in terms of large scale shipping, really reducing the cost of shipping 20, 30 megawatts. If you look at utilization of space, it obviously makes sense. For certain projects, they have limited amount of roof space, and if you can install 540 watts instead of 390 watts, fantastic. Easier installations as well, better utilization of space, and larger output for for your system. CapEx reduction is obviously the main goal for any C&I or utility project. The more money you can save on installing the system or procurement installation, the better it is for the return in the long run. Another thing is the manufacturing, specs of a 450 versus a 550, for example, are not much different in reality. I mean, the things that are only different is the number of cells, the number of buzz bars, as example. So more competitive pricing can be offered on the larger cells. So it also helps, the capex output and capex expenditure, and also obviously greater power density per square meter. Also operation and maintenance. So I mean, it's a standard. Less equipment, less operations, less maintenance. Now, before I carry on to that, some of the things. Sorry, I just wanted to check. So yeah, so if you have a consideration to where South Africa is currently versus the rest of the world, yes, it's a bit Africa in general, yes, it's a bit behind, but with the way trends are going in the market at the moment, and with the, like I said, the utility scale projects in the pipeline as just a start, we're definitely going to be exceeding that 2,500 megawatts installed quite easily, and like I said, hopefully surpassing the 3,500 megawatt capacity in the next 2 or 3 years as a standard. With all the mines coming online, trying to have their self-generation systems in place, it's definitely a fantastic time to be in the renewable energy space in South Africa. So, for example, some of our case studies that we have are 120 megawatt project in Egypt. It was installed in 2019. We were also involved in one of the first cement factories in Africa to install solar PV in Namibia. One of the first mining companies in Burkina Faso, 15 megawatts in 2018. And as of today, we are just over 1 gigawatt deployed in Africa. I mean, the way things are going currently, we hope to double that in the near future. So that's where we are currently. If you look at, sorry, these are just some images of the various projects I've mentioned above. And if you look at some of our global case studies, you can see, I mean, 220 megawatt plant built in Brazil, 100 megawatt plant China, 80 megawatt plant in the States, and a 10 megawatt plant in Egypt. So, I mean, I think the goal for Southern Africa is also to have more larger scale utility plants come online in the next few years. I mean, in the region of 250 megawatts, for example. I think that's the direction we're definitely headed. So it'll be exciting to see how the market develops in the next few years. Yes, and that's it for my presentation from there, but I'm happy to speak about anything discussed and answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pasker, for a very interesting presentation, taking us through some of the trends in Southern Africa, as well as the GA Solar's offerings for larger modules. We have some questions that have come our way. The first question is it's an interesting question, maybe a query or a clarification. With larger sizes modules, would you not need more people to carry them to place? So there being no savings in the labor cost?
So you must, yes and no. You must remember the footprint of the larger solar modules now haven't increased so drastically that 3 people would have to carry a solar module. Yes, in the future, when 210 millimeter cells are developed and a 800 or 1 kilowatt solar PV module is introduced and is actually feasible, then yes. But the actual physical footprint from a 400 watt module to a 600 watt module is negligible in the reality of things. I mean, it's not double the size. It's not even 1.5 times the size. So in that aspect, I would definitely say there's still a cost saving benefit.
All right. There's another question from the audience. Is bifacial really profitable in terms of LCOE in utility scale PV plants in Africa?
I would believe so, yes. So, I mean, the thing is with bifacial, specifically for utility scale, you're looking at a 3 to 18% efficiency compared to standard, monocrystalline or mono-faced modules. So absolutely, for utility scale, it definitely makes sense to rather look at bifacial. And I mean, the price difference between a standard module versus a bifacial is not drastic as well. what you gain in the 3 to 18% efficiency, it makes up for the slight price increase.
Thank you. You'd mentioned that obviously now there's a trend towards larger modules. How has been the uptake of these in Africa in particular? Are now developers going in for a larger size here?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's the trend we've specifically seen even in the last year, is a massive push towards, 450, even towards the higher 540 range or 535 range. It's definitely a trend towards these panels compared to the conventional olden, 350 to 390 watt range. I'm not saying there's no place for those modules in the future. There'll always be a place for them, but from what we've seen as a trend in the market, it's definitely pushing towards a mainstream 450 to 600 watt range.
All right, thank you. And you did mention about the the benefits, advantages of larger modules. Are there any challenges that are there any O&M challenges, transportation challenges, any challenges that are there associated with these?
I mean, like with all technology or newer technologies, there's going to be challenges. I wouldn't say there's any more or less challenges compared to smaller module frames, but in our opinion, the benefits outweigh any sort of cons or challenges compared to smaller modules. Like I said, in terms of shipping or logistics, you can definitely get more volume shipped than what could previously be done, for example. So there is definitely more benefits.
All right, thank you. There's another question. From the outlook of the temperature coefficient and the temperature in Africa, what is the loss from the STC to the NOCT?
That's a good question. I'll have to check specifically, but any data sheet or information related to our modules we can share at any given point, and it is available on our website.
All right, thank you. Is there a risk that PV modules prices will rise next year? Logistics, glass, silicon.
So I mean, over the last, say 2020, we also saw a lot of challenges with regards to volatile prices, increasing, decreasing, increasing again, that sort of thing. Mainly due to the pandemic, due to silicone shortages, due to glass shortages. Anything can happen is the reality. We do probably see slight price increases coming in now towards Q2, and maybe obviously dropping off again by the end of the year. But like I said, anything can happen in this industry. It could be another silicone shortage, for example. We don't know as yet, but we obviously try to forecast and to mitigate as much risk as we can in order to keep prices as competitive as possible.
Thank you. There's another question. How to get PAN files for new modules?
So I can be contacted directly, or you could reach out to any of our local distributors or to any of our resellers. They'll be happy to assist. But most of it is available on our website. If not, like I said, I could be contacted directly.
Yes, it'll be great. Maybe if you could share your contact details in the chat box, and the audience can reach out to you. So that
Absolutely.
would be. Yes. There's another question. What is your opinion about perovskite technology for efficiency improvements?
Sorry, say again.
Perovskite technology.
I'm not aware of it, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. Maybe we'll ask the delegate to rephrase the question, and we can come back. He can share that question again with us. I would like to ask you, as a supplier, what have been the challenges that you have faced in executing projects in Africa?
Sure. Like I said, the main challenges were seen last year, obviously with the pandemic, and with, like I said, silicone shortages and prices being driven up. One of the main challenges we've seen though over the last few months is extreme congestion from shipping from China to Africa. There's been a lack of containers available, and there's been also volatile prices in shipping costs. So that has been one of the main challenges we've seen. But other than that, it's definitely a more of a positive outlook the way the market is going now. We can see there's a lot more inquiries coming through, a lot more projects being won, and a lot more larger scale projects being implemented. So it is definitely a positive outlook for the economy, or sorry, for the market as a whole.
Great. So, according to you, what is the dominant PV technology in Africa at the moment, and which one do you think is going to gain dominance going forward? Do you expect the trend to change?
So we've seen in the last, couple of months, 2 years, that poly technology has completely fallen away, in our opinion, with monocrystalline being the dominant technology. PERC technology is obviously the way forward. So that's definitely where the market is currently. There is a few, arguments that poly technology is still, very relevant in the market, but maybe a few years ago when the price difference was drastic. These days we can produce poly and mono at the same price essentially. So why not produce a high efficiency model?
All right, thank you. Is there a scope for local manufacturing? According to you, what steps can be taken to enhance local manufacturing in South Africa and in the continent?
I mean, definitely, that's something that has to be looked at eventually. Reforms into local production has to be followed, and quite strictly, in my opinion. The only thing is, without compromising quality standards. So it might be a bit of a costly exercise, but it has to be done efficiency and correctly, that the right quality is being produced locally. But it definitely has to be done in the next few years. Or it has to be started now and perfected over the next few years.
All right. There's a follow-up question on when we were talking about the technologies. Is the predominance of monocrystalline due to COVID?
I wouldn't say so. It's just the trend most manufacturers are taking at this stage. Like I said, the price, the cost of manufacturing on mono is essentially the same as poly, actually, and it's a better technology, more efficient. I mean, that's the way the entire market is going.
All right. Are polysilicon module definitely supersede, or may they still have improvement in future? Can we expect a comeback?
In my opinion, I don't think so. Like I said, there's probably a place for poly still, and there always will be. But the way the market is going now, I don't foresee it coming back anytime soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Pasker. That will be all the questions we had from our audience. Thank you so much for a very engaging session and taking us through some of the recent work that you've been doing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.